Good level design starts before you design a single level. Unfortunately, I had to learn that the hard way with my game Spoontastic Baby. I made a big level design mistake, the game failed, and in this video I want to share with you what I think went wrong so you don't need to make the same mistake. The goal of the game is to feed the baby. Unfortunately, it doesn't want to be fed. It spits, it shoots fire, it has laser eyes, it's basically the devil, it even eats your spoon every now and then. So it's basically a little baby boss fight game. We wanted players to keep playing the game, so there is an infinite amount of levels and every level is slightly harder than the level before. One thing I realized even back then when I made the game was that levels need to be very different and unique, otherwise it would get pretty boring pretty soon. And the way I went about solving that issue was to randomize the baby's stats in every single level. The stats that probably made the most impact were the frequencies of the different attacks. So in some levels the player is only attacked by lasers, in other levels the player is only attacked by fire, and then once again in different levels the baby might use a variety of different attacks. We have 7 attack patterns, so in theory this should result in a ton of possible combinations, right? Wrong. The thing I missed in my thought process was that those attack patterns are not really combined. They're still happening one after another. Doesn't matter how we rearrange them, it's the 7 exact same building blocks every single time. The result was that the levels were pretty boring and the game failed. So the first takeaway from this project is that level design is really your best friend if you want to create a lot of content, and that's simply due to the fact that rearranging and recombining existing mechanics is a lot more efficient than creating entirely new ones. Secondly, make sure it is possible to recombine your mechanics in meaningful ways. In my game Overcharge I have blue turrets, green turrets, but I can also combine them and have both at the same time. Depending on how I rearrange these turrets as a level designer, it will result in a completely different experience and challenge for the player. You know in which game that is absolutely not the case? Yeah. Also, recombinability is not a binary thing. It's not like you have it or you don't. There are a lot of steps in between. Some mechanics might have some interesting interactions with each other and others might not. Your goal is obviously to get this net as dense as possible because that makes it easier to create interesting and varied levels. One way I tried to make the interaction between green and blue turrets more interesting in Overcharge, for example, was by giving green turrets the ability to slow down enemies. This way blue turrets have more time to shoot them as well, so synergies like that are what you're looking for. Third thing I've learned from Spoontastic is that you've gotta leverage context. Once again, if we look at Overcharge, we can see that this turret has an entirely different context than this turret. Or than this turret. So depending on their surroundings and depending on their context, they feel different to use for the player. You know in which game that is absolutely not the case? Yeah. The easiest way to create context in my opinion is the terrain, but only if your game objects have interesting interactions with the terrain. These presents, for example, use the terrain to move, so yes, they have interactions with the terrain, not super interesting ones, but they do. These fireworks, on the other hand, don't interact with the terrain at all. That reduces the reusability of that mechanic quite a lot, because we can't give it a different context, or at the very least not a vastly different one. Of course, there are other ways to give something context as well, for example, surrounding objects. If you want to have any chance at creating quality levels, you've gotta make sure you have a good toolbox and a good set of building blocks that can actually be used and recombined in interesting ways. I'd love to keep exploring this topic in future videos, and obviously I'll link them here once there's something out. Sorry that this video was a little short, I'll try to get healthy soon. Hope this helps you to avoid some of the mistakes I've made in the past. Let's discuss it in the comments and see you in the next one.